And please stand. You ready to do the pledge? Mr. Henry Chappelle will lead us in prayer tonight. I'd like to thank everyone for attending tonight. We'll go ahead and get into our regular agenda. First item on the agenda is to consider approval of minutes of the March 2nd, 2020 meeting.
Make a motion we approve as presented.
I second the motion.
We have a motion by Ms. Sherry Spruill, second by Mr. Jerry Walker. Madam Secretary, record a vote.
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. We'll close item 1 and move on to item 2 on the agenda. Item 2 is a presentation and consider approval of comprehensive annual financial report. Ms. Reeves.
Thank you, Council, for allowing me to be with y'all today. In front of you is our comprehensive annual financial report. A comprehensive annual financial report is a report that is a little bit more than just an annual report, has a lot more statistical schedules in it than what you would see in a normal report, has 10 years of financial data in the back, which is a statistical section. It also has a lot more financial information in the front. I've had the help of Brooks and Watson, which is the auditor that y'all have engaged for 3 years to do the audit, and he is on the phone and has a short PowerPoint presentation that he'd like to go over with y'all, and will present the audit.
Hello? Okay.
So we've started our city council meeting, and the mayor's read this item, so you can go ahead and give the presentation, and they'll have questions as you go, and maybe at the end.
Okay, great. I assume everybody has the PowerPoint in front of them or up on a screen maybe? Okay, great. So I'll try to be descriptive with what I'm showing and page numbers, and stop me if you have any questions or any confusion. So anyway, the audit was completed over the year ended September 30, 2020. My name is John Watson. I'm the independent auditor that led the team here. So we'll flip to slide 2. Quick overview of the audit process. So the financial audit was conducted consistent with generally accepted governmental auditing standard, GAGAS. Financial audits will follow a 3-phased approach: planning phase, fieldwork phase, and conclusion reporting phase. What we do with the planning phase is we look at current year results relative to our expectations, and then we test where things aren't working consistently or areas that are highest risk. Gives us the best risk-based approach to focus on areas most susceptible to risk of error or fraud. The fieldwork phase, where we actually test those areas that we selected for testing, we do that through confirmations with third parties, vouching samples, selections to underlying evidence to make sure it's recorded properly. And then we evaluate results to determine if things are in error or if there's potential fraud, things of that nature, and propose adjustments or findings from that work. And that leads to the third phase, which is the conclusion and reporting phase, which is where we summarize all those results, propose adjustments, and prepare the report that you all should have in front of you. So financial audit generally is going to follow that approach. We'll flip to the next page here. So the report this year, it is an annual comprehensive financial report, which is great. What the comprehensive is the addition this year. So there's some sections that have been added to this report. So it basically covers all areas required or possible for a city. Before you were providing all areas required, but now you've provided some additional areas, and you can submit for the, an award with the GFOA that Mikhail's worked pretty hard on. So that's great. So I tried to underline the additional sections that have been added relative to last year. So that first section is the introductory section. Primarily in there is the letter of transmittal. That's a letter from management, describes results for the current year and then forward-looking information. So that section is new this year and is a required part of a complete comprehensive financial report. The next section is the auditor's opinions, bullet 2 here, and that is a letter from us, your auditor, describing whether the financials are consistent with U.S. GAAP or if there's any qualifications. And we'll go over each section briefly in slides to follow. The third bullet here, management's discussion and analysis, that shows current year results relative to prior year and some explanations about changes. It's a good place to look, see how you did relative to the prior year. Fourth bullet here, basic financials. Those are basically all the numbers, the heart of it. You got presented at a government-wide level, so that type of basis of accounting, and then a fund level, which is a more detailed basis, follows that. And the notes to the financials follow that and provide a lot of details about those results. Toward the back of the report, the required supplementary information, that's got your budget to actual schedules. It's got a year over year for your pension schedule, about 6 years now, and we'll look at that. And then at the very back of your report, or the supplementary information section, which now have budget to actuals for all your special revenue funds, which is another addition. And then the statistical section, which is a big addition as well, has some really good information about the city and a lot of 10-year trending information that you can look at and see kind of the direction of the city over the last 10 years. And then the very end of the report is the compliance and internal control section. So that is new this year. That relates to qualifying for a single audit this year. State awards exceeded $750,000, so you are required to have a single audit, which we've completed, and a report will be coming soon. So that is everything within the annual comprehensive financial report. Flip to slide 4, please. So I mentioned toward the front of the report is the letter from the independent auditor, our firm. There are 4 types of opinions you could receive. Unmodified at the top here is the best, and then it just gets worse from there. Modified, disclaimed, and adverse. City received an unmodified opinion, so that is a good thing. That is the highest level of assurance the CPA can provide. There are no material errors within this report that we are aware of. Really, everybody did a great job. Mikhail, Scott, Ed, everybody getting us what we need. So appreciate that. And this kind of speaks to their hard work, getting us what we need. Flip to page 5. So I mentioned all the results here relate to the year ended 9/30/20. So to kind of give you an idea of what 9/30/20 was and how that looked relative to 9/30/19, here's a chart here. Just went over some key metrics. So we'll just start at the top and work our way down. Citywide cash and investments here at the top, 9/30/19 in the middle, and then 9/30/20 toward the right in the change here. So year end, it was $17,129,000. That was an increase of $1.7 million for the year. That was primarily due to a debt issuance during the year. Next line item, net position citywide decreased $524,000 to $6,538,000 at 9/30/20. Governmental fund balances, third line item down, also decreased to $7,320,917, which was a change of negative $2,260,000 for the year. That primarily related to capital outlay, so capital expenditures for the sports complex. So nothing alarming there. Fourth line item down, unassigned general fund balance was $2,700,578 at year end. That is 21% of your annual general fund expenditures. That increased slightly from last year, $191,042. So you're over 2 months, which is good. 21%, I think is, let's see, what is that? 0.21 times 12. Yeah, about 2.5 months. So GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, who's a body we look to for a lot of guidance, they recommend at least 2 months, and then they have a lot of reasons as why you would want more than 2 months. They're kind of leave it at your discretion. But you're sitting at 2.5 months. That's basically for unearmarked money that's available to spend for future expenditures. So that's a good reserve. Unrestricted net position proprietary funds, decrease of $367,000 for the year. Proprietary net operating income for the year decreased $964,000. That decreased primarily due to the new contract with Titus County Freshwater District number 1. So there was significant increase in monthly expenses to them, which resulted in that decrease this year. Citywide outstanding debt increased by $1.8 million in the current year. I mentioned the debt issuance in an earlier slide, and that's what led to the increase there, net of some payments during the year. Net pension liability, it went down by $2,598,000, the last row here, which was 7% improvement during the year. Flip to slide 6, please. So this slide is a pie chart of your governmental revenues. This is governmental activities, so not your business type activities. We'll look at that in a minute. So total governmental revenues were $15,796,214 for the year, compared to prior year, which was $14,706,000. So increase there of about $1 million. Sales taxes were 33% of your revenues at $5,152,000. Prior year was 32%, $4,764,000. So increase there. Property taxes were 26%, $4,108,000. Prior year was also 26%, $3.8 million. Charges for services were 12%, $1,922,000. Prior year was 14%, $2,129,000. That decrease was primarily fines and forfeitures, which we pretty much observed across the board for our cities due to COVID. Franchise and local taxes, second from the bottom here, 14%, $2,278,000. Prior year was 12%, $1,742,000. Last bullet, your royalty income on the landfill was 4%, $701,295. Prior year was 7% of your revenues, $982,000. So decrease there of almost $300,000. Okay, slide 7, if you'll turn to that. So the last slide was the revenues, and here are your expenses for governmental activities. Pie chart again, you can see the different functions making up your expenses. So first bullet, total governmental expenses were $16,565,000. Prior year was $15,316,000. So increase there. Public safety make up 56% of your governmental expenses, $9,349,000. Prior year it was 63%, $9,598,000. General government made up 15%, $2,447,000. Prior year was 11%, $1,653,000. That was the increase there was primarily related to the Civic Center. It is now presented within governmental activities. In the past, it was presented within business type activities, but it was moved over in the current year. Parks and Recreation, 10%, $1,610,000. Prior year was also 10%, $1,505,000. Last bullet, Public Works, 15%, $2,429,000. Prior year was 11%, $1,724,000 increase there as well. We'll flip to slide 8. So all that information was at a government-wide level. I mentioned in an earlier slide, results are also presented on a fund level. So this is a more detailed look at each fund and what's going on within those funds for your governmental funds. Just working left to right. Left is your general fund. This is where the majority of your activity occurs. And then the street fund, construction bond fund are considered major special revenue funds. And then your non-majors are grouped together, and that's the second from the right there, and then a total on the far right. So just circled a few things. You can see your general fund. Its revenues are less than its expenditures, so we see that net there of $827,000. If you follow it down, there's some other financing sources. Those are transfers in from other funds that basically get it back to zero or close to zero in this case, negative $79,244. Street fund basically operating at break even, also had transfers in that led to the surplus here. Construction bond fund in the middle here. So it spent a lot of those funds, so it had a negative $2,541,000. No issues there. It's just a timing issue. You're gonna raise money one period, and then the next period you're gonna spend it. So that's working consistent with expectations. Similarly, non-major governmental funds. I had some funds to spend, and that's the negative $781,000 there. We'll flip to the next slide. Okay, so I mentioned toward the back of the report is your general fund budget to actual, and that's what this slide represents. It's a summary of your budget to actual for the general fund. So on the left is your final budget after all amendments. In the middle are the actual results, and then on the right are the variance with budget. So you budgeted a break-even budget, and we can see revenues top right, pretty much almost hit on the head there. Revenues exceeded the budget by $3,597. Expenditures actual was over budget by $119,000. And that's what led to the actual being over budget at net of $79,244. That's the bottom right. Turn to slide 10. So all of that information related to the governmental side, and these are your proprietary funds. Right now, your water, sewer, and your airport funds. Before it was also included your civic center, but again, that's been moved over to governmental now. So 2 funds here. We can see circled toward the top here, operating income, so your revenues less expenses, which does include depreciation. So water, sewer is operating at about $1 million surplus for this period, 9/30/20 year, and then airport was operating at a loss of $539,000. And that loss is basically depreciation. So cash flow wise, it's basically breaking even, but it is once you include depreciation, it does operate at a loss. And then it just rolls through. If you go down here, you can see the transfers out for the water sewer of $1,450,000. So we noticed transfers in on the governmental side, and that's where a lot of those transfers are coming from, and that feeds to this overall change in net position we see here circled at the bottom. Okay, we'll flip to slide 11, please. So the net pension liability, that's what this slide here is. The left column is the most recent, and then it works backwards 4 years. There's, I believe, 6 or 7 years presented within your report. You can focus on the bottom circle here. So this is your position. So it's your assets compared to that estimated pension liability and what position you're in. So you can see the net pension liability at current year end is $5,217,631. If you move over to the right, last year it was $7,815,880. So a significant improvement this year, and you can see why is what's circled above. Net investment income for the year was $5,009,166. So it really benefited your net pension liability a lot. You can see how that is the biggest factor impacting your net pension liability year in, year out, if you just take a look. Couple of things to note, some bullets at the bottom here. So your funded ratio, which is a measure of your asset compared to that liability, is 88%. So your asset is 88% of your estimated liability. That's really good. Prior year was 81%. Average funding level for 2018 in the United States was 72.6 per study from NCPERS. So you are well above average. I've seen as high as anything over 90% is considered exceptional, but definitely over 80% is really good. And that impacts your contribution rates, which are being adjusted each year based on your position in their plan. Contribution rates for the last 3 years, second bullet here, 2020 is 15.15%. It's kind of been around there, 15.27%, 15.42, but it's trending down, and you're in a really good spot. I've seen as high contribution rates as, I think, close to 25% and as low as 4%, so kind of sitting in the middle there. And these percentages are of payroll, so really that's where you get hit in the budget are those contribution rates for the city. So we'll flip to slide 12. So that is everything I wanted to tell you. That honestly is a lot of information. I try to hit the high points, but it is a 190-page report, so there's a lot of details there, and hopefully I captured that. In addition to that, there are 2 letters, and that's just want to mention those letters. The first one's communication with those charged with governance letter. Audit was completed in compliance with all ethics requirements. We are completely independent. No difficulties with management. They're great. They really do a good job of getting us what we need. No uncorrected misstatements. All of our audit adjustments were booked. And I know I was talking to Mikhail about that as she was booking them. And those are listed in the audit letter. So within that letter, at the back of it, you'll see a listing of those audit adjustments. Next letter are internal control findings. So not uncommon at all. I have it for all my cities. We're always try to pride ourselves on looking through things and trying to spot any potential weaknesses, and that's what that letter consists of. I went through those in good detail with the audit committee. And honestly, a great strides from last year. We made a lot of suggestions last year, and there's been a lot implemented, really great improvements in a lot of areas, and hopefully that trend continues. But that's that second letter. So we can go ahead and flip to the next slide here, slide 13. That is everything I wanted to share, everything I'm required to share, and all those things I wanted to share. So at this time, open it up to any questions you all might have.
Hey, council, we have any questions?
As John mentioned, his findings are and the letter he wrote. Concerning the internal controls and so forth. His letter's on 173 at the back. Remember we talked about for the last several years, the auditors have pulled the findings out, tucked it in the front cover of the audit. So we'll just direct you back there. 173, his letter is, and then it talks about the findings and what we've done to correct, what we still have to do, and so forth. So it's all in that letter back there. And like he said, our audit committee is Mayor Pro Tem Tim Dale and Council Member Jerry Walker. And we met with them 10 days ago or so, a week or 10 days ago, and went over this with Don, and they answered questions and so forth. So if you have any questions of Tim or Jerry, please make it public. Yeah.
I'll just say over these in length there for a couple hours there a couple of weeks ago. I think every item that we had questioned about, or we needed more information, or wanted information on, was totally explained. Why, how, when. So I feel comfortable with it, as you guys can see here from 73, page 173 through the back there. That really explains everything here. what his recommendations were, what McHale did to correct any of the issues that to make it more clear and better. So I felt good about it.
If you remember, one of the items that we needed, there was a couple of items we needed that they noted at the end of last year audit. One was the contract we had with the Republic on the landfill. That took almost a year to get done. In fact, I think we approved it after the year end of September 30. So it was noted that like we took all year to do that, but that's been done. That's a major thing we won't ever have to deal with again. And then one of the other ones was, if you remember, they said our building fees, permit fees were not approved by council and they were inconsistent, and that the application plan and process was not there. We kind of just did it as people came in. And so, and then this year we tried to fix that, and we actually got that. If you remember, we approved the fees and so forth right at the end of the fiscal year. We didn't get it done in the fiscal year, so you'll see that noted in here. Even though it's done, it noted that it hadn't done it by the end of the year. So just so you understand, but basically you see us either completed all of those or we're well into fixing the problem, but they still noted what we still need to do. Big improvement.
I have a question, please. On page 180, Mikhail and John, could you all explain this page from last year's audit? There was some confusion. There's strengths and weaknesses from page 180. Please.
John, we went over that in the with the audit committee. That's on page 180. Do you want to talk about that?
I think so. I want to make sure. Are you talking about the finding there?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, and I hate to. I think I heard you, but if I go on a tangent and it's not direct to what you said, just pull me back, because I want to make sure. I don't know. So finding 2020-001, is that what you're referring to? Okay, good. I appreciate that. So this finding is basically there's audit adjustments, right? And that's what's listed in that letter. So it's not uncommon. It's nothing to be concerned about. But we are not a part of the city's internal controls. We are external party. So we come in and if we come in and do tests and propose adjustments, then something, maybe more time was needed. I think in this case, talking with McHale and Ed, maybe if we would have given them more time, we were, anxious to get in there and get working. And a lot of these, McHale could have caught in her closing process. But the bottom line is, it's kind of, the proof is in the pudding. If there's some adjustments, then that does represent a weakness. Now, I have this finding on the vast majority. I think it might be all my clients. So it's nothing to be alarmed by. Now, what you want to see, I think, is when there's a lot of journal entries, which I think the year before, basically last year, there were a lot of journal entries. But what's good is that there's less, and I expect there to be less and less. So we've noticed marked improvement, between this audit and last audit. And I really, working with McHale and Scott, I know I kind of expect the same moving forward. And you'll see that with the findings too. There's less of them, and there's in the ones from last year, like Ed was going over, at least one or two of them, they've been addressed. But yeah, this basically represents that there were adjustments needed to get those books consistent with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. And if there are those significant adjustments, then we'll cite it. But again, nothing to be overly concerned of. I think the goal should be to constantly improve and get those journal entries to be less and less.
There you go. this is Ed. Do you want to go through maybe quickly these, there's not very many of them, the findings, and just explain what they are?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I will do that. So that was finding 2020-001, okay? Again, I have that on the vast majority of my clients. Finding 2020-002, which is on the next page, 181. So there's a certain level of checks under 5,000 that the AP person can print with that are signed. So basically the signatures within the system. We want to basically put a control around that where that person cannot print that check with the signature. So that's the finding there, and you can read through the recommendation and the response, but that's what that finding is there. And Ed, do you want to interject anything on that one or any of these as I go?
You're talking about the signatures? Well, because the person that writes the check then just applies a electronic signature for both signatures, and as John told us, if somebody else applied the signature, so it's not the same person writing them, that kind of thing. So it's I asked him, I said, I remember when I first started 40 years ago, I'd sit and face a mayor on payday or paying the bills, and we'd have a stack of checks, and I'd take half, we'd talk and sign, and we'd switch stacks, and we'd talk and sign for an hour. I said, I thought we'd moved and got more efficient, and he said, well, you still need to have a checks and balance. So I said, I hope you're not taking me back to those days where we just signed for an hour every other day or something. But I think, and John, you can correct me, but I think he said you can do those, but the same person that writes it shouldn't apply the signature.
Right. So exactly. I want the person that's the signer to be the authorizer. That's the control function. Whoever the signer is, we want them to basically authorize it. So whether that's, hey, if I print a check, it has to go through, if Ed's the signer, it has to go through Ed, and Ed sees the check, the amount, what it's for, and he can then basically put in his password, and it could issue the electronic signature. That's fine. What I don't want is that person that's printing the check, say an AP clerk, they can print his signature, because so that's basically what we're trying to circumvent there. All right, finding 2020-003, cash management. So the city utilizes a pooled cash account, which is very common for cities. It basically, cities have all these funds, and we took a good look at them a little bit ago. But it's really cumbersome to have an account for every single fund and every single purpose. So what they do a lot of times is they use one bank account, but it's considered a pooled account, which means a lot of funds have a slice of that bank account. Kind of like if you think about if you got a husband and wife and they're sharing an account, but they all actually had to keep their balances. Well, it works really well functionally, but what's important to remember is you want to treat each fund, each balance in those pooled cash accounts as its own cash account. Because as soon as you're going negative, you're basically borrowing, which can be okay. I mean, they can be authorized transfers, but you want to make sure you're managing it to keep it positive, and if they do need to borrow, go ahead and do a transfer. You just don't want them running negative. There were some negative balances, and so that's what that one relates to. So that on an ongoing basis, and Mikhail and I have had some discussion about that, just reconciling monthly, whatever makes sense.
If you think about it, if you think about it, by having the account, it allows you actually to go negative without actually having a negative bank account. So you have one. So you may get a little lazy and sloppy by making not reconciling every account. And what he's saying is you need to reconcile every account and not.
Mikhail, could you come up?
Sometimes it involves a cash flow issue with especially our hotel motel funds and some of our revenue accounts that don't come in as quickly as other ones. It allows us to subsidize the funding in the general fund until the revenue comes in those funds, and then we pay the general fund back. So that's kind of how we manage some of the cash flows in some of those accounts when the revenue comes in later in some of the other ones. And so that's how we've been doing it. But we'll just have to physically transfer the money into those accounts out of the general fund as opposed to just underfunding the accounts based on what he's saying.
And if you think about it, our fund balance, unreserved fund balance, is for emergencies and to make sure we have money to tide us over when the revenue's not coming in and that kind of thing. So he'd like us to maybe move some cash, and then as it comes in, move it back or that kind of thing, rather than just let them go negative. We did have a little debate about that, but the auditor always wins, by the way.
Yeah, it's a good explanation. And I've seen it in much worse situations where certain funds that it's just been neglected for so long and they've been spending forever and ever, and it's just borrowing is what it is. I mean, borrowing from yourself from a different fund. But yeah, I think just staying on top of it, and if it's a timing issue, taking care of it. So 2020-004, which is page 182, kind of goes hand in hand with it. There's a deficit in the fund balance for the capital replacement fund. And I believe that was replenished in fiscal 21, if I remember. Yeah, October, it says here in the response. So it's a timing issue, but just paying heed to that, making sure all funds are positive where they can be, sometimes inevitable, but that's what that finding is. Last finding, 005.
John, so I can't get my button down fast enough. So when I look at what 2004 is and then the 2003, why couldn't they both been the same finding rather than have two different ones?
The two different symptoms. Yeah, in one's cash specific, in one's fund balance specific. And so, yeah, it's a fair point. A little bit of preference there, but yeah, that's fair. Um, 005, Ed touched on this related to permits. So there was we're always going to do a lot of walkthroughs of your standard processes, and then we look at it kind of unexpected areas too, to try to provide kind of surprise procedures. But permits we're always going to look at every year, and I think a lot of this was shored up, but there were just some selections that not all the documentation was in place. But I know they made some strides in this area. And keep in mind, we a lot of this testing of walkthroughs, which is what this is, walk through your permits process, that's really during the summer, and this was summer of 2020. So we're several months past that at this point. So I think this one likely has been fully addressed. We look forward to doing that same walkthrough in this coming summer.
Do y'all have any questions of John?
Okay, thank you, John. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
At this time, if there's no further questions, the floor would be open for considerable approval of comprehensive annual financial report.
I'll make a motion that we consider the approval of the comprehensive annual report as presented tonight by Brooke Watson.
I second the motion.
We have a motion made by Mr. Tim Dale, second by Mr. Jerry Walker. Madam Secretary, please record the vote.
Aye.
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 That motion carries unanimously. We'll now close that item and move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is the financial report.
Thank you, Council, for approving the audit. I will now submit that to the GFOA for the award, hopefully in about a year this time.
next year, we'll be hopefully presenting that award to y'all. So I'm very, very excited about that. Attached in your report is the financial report. We ended the month with about $24.3 million in the bank. Our sales tax was about 9.62 for the Industrial Development Corporation above budget. Those financials were also included in your package. And then the general fund sales tax was up about the same percentage, 9.62% above budget. I already looked at February sales tax, and it's up almost 14%. I mean, March's sales tax, so we received that one, so we did really well. I'm assuming that's the sales from the winter storm. So, as y'all know, most of the stores were cleared out over the winter storm, so we did pretty well on sales tax during that. We're still on trend to end the year at about 11.5% above budget on sales tax. Overall revenue is on budget for the general fund. Utility funds are also on budget. Water sales is down still a little bit. The winter averaging that we did last month affected approximately 72% of our customers on the water side. That's about how many overall it affected. So it did really well. I think it accomplished what we meant for it to accomplish with leaks and stuff. So we have one more billing cycle that we'll do here next week that should cover the rest of that winter storm for the rest of the customers. But the big billing cycle was the one that we just did, and it was approximately 72% of the customers received a reduction of some sort in their bill. The rest of them had either no change to their bill or maybe $1 or $2 increase.
Do you know how much we actually ended up having to forgive as a result of the averaging?
I can get that number for you if you want. We didn't really do we didn't actually calculate the bill because it was just an average, but we just looked at what percentage of customers received a lower bill. So I can get to you what the actual bill would have been had we ran it normally and then compared it to what the billing was at the average.
I'd like to know kind of what we did, what was forgiven as a lump sum, what it would have been versus what it actually ended up being after the averaging.
Okay, I'll get that number for you. But other than that, we do have the utility adjustment policy online so that after this point going forward, if anybody still has an issue with leaks or anything, that they can come and talk to me or whatever. But I'm hoping that we have given people enough time to get everything fixed. So we're hoping that this gave them plenty of time to get everything done. So other than that, expenses are still under budget or on par. It's around 58%, which is where we would have expected everybody to be. 58% remaining in their budget, which is about where we are expected. We did make one big bond payment this month on our Texas Water Development Board bond, which is due this month. So you'll see that reflected in your debt on the water and sewer fund. Solid waste collections look good, and everything else, building permits are right on target. We're actually seeing, if you combine all our building permits, they're up about at about 75% of collections, and they should be around 50% right now. So we are seeing a little bit of increase over budget with all our combined building permits. So that's pretty good. So I'll take any. Also, your building stuff's at the bottom. Where we are on capital projects, utility projects, and the sports park is also included in your budget packet.
Thank you, Ms. Reeves. Okay, if we have no further questions on this item, we'll go ahead and close item 3, finance report, and we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda. Item 4 on the agenda is to consider approval of pay request from Symmetry Turf for work at the new sports complex. How you doing, Lanny? Doing great.
Once again, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. Always a pleasure. What we got before you right now is MHS's recommendation for pay application number 26 for the sports complex for Symmetry Turf installations. Majority of this is just the closing amounts for the structures, for some of the landscaping and things like that as well, to close those out, but it holds the retainage back. So what we're recommending is $229,422.69 for this pay application. We're holding a little over $349,000 in retainage that's still being held for the project at this point. The reason for doing that is because, as we'll talk about here in a little bit, with substantial completion, they've completed the major items, with the exceptions of punch list items, which is normal for a substantial completion. But there is a lot of work to be done with the vegetation out there, and there's a good bit of cleanup and some things like that. So we want to hold that retainage. We didn't reduce it. We want to hold it as is right now. At least that's our recommendation as for right now. So with that being said, are there any questions or comments?
How much is the total retainage there?
It's over $349,000. I can give you the exact amount. I'm sorry, $339,411.82, I believe.
Also, this payment is for materials that had to be bought and installed out there at the park. And in order to get reimbursed from the grant application we have, we need to pay this one or we won't get the grant reimbursed. So this is an important payment that we need to do.
Right, and that's linked to the substantial completion too. But Texas Parks and Wildlife, you have another draft on it. It's got a time limit on it, and so this would be something they would need before they release that next payment back to you or reimbursement back to you.
What percentage of this is materials and versus labor?
I did not calculate that. I'm not sure the answer to that.
Are you satisfied that, I'm not questioning the materials, I guess, as much as I would question they put it in, and I know we got a lot of issues, a lot of punch list out there that has to be done. The materials I don't have a problem with. I guess I would want to question to come back, and I don't want to be guilty of licking our calf over as far as having paying the fees again for if that's a 50-50, 75-30, what?
So to answer the question, the reason we're recommending this is we believe the $339,000 would cover if we had somebody else come in to do this project. So if they walked away, somebody else could come in and they could do the remaining work for this amount of money. So we've got that, plus we've got their performance and payment bonds as insurance as well.
Remind the council on the dollar amount on that.
For the performance and payment bond, so the performance bond just says that they have a bond that says they'll complete the project. So whatever it takes. Yes, and that's a cost that you put into the original budget. So if something like this happens and they go, heaven forbid, they go bankrupt or whatever, somebody can come in and finish the project and you're not out the money.
Are they not planning to come back and finish this punch list?
So the answer is yes, they're actually out there working now. They have been coming back. They have had some rain, as we've had throughout this whole project, which has just been a common excuse through this whole project. But yes, they are back out there. I was told James Winters was going to be back out there today. I did not check that. I asked Ricky, and neither one of us went and checked out there to see that. But he's the landscape person that's going to be out there. So yes, they are coming back. Every time I talk to them, they're responsive. It's just we're just doing it a step at a time instead of a lump sum at a time.
So this payment request tonight for this 229 plus thousand, does that include the playground, the splash pad, and all that stuff? Is that the equipment that this is part of?
That's the entire park, yes, sir.
Question I have is, because I've been out there myself, there's major, for example, on the rock climbing wall, that material's already fading. Stickers and stuff on that equipment are already cracking, peeling, and coming off for safety stickers. The splash pad has missing components and parts to it. So my question is, even if we approve this payment tonight, is that stuff still covered under the original manufacturer warranty that we can get replaced? Because we haven't even had it open to the public yet to play on it.
Right, and I visited with I visited with MHS, who's already visited with the manufacturer of the playground equipment. They've offered two ways to resolve that, either to come out and paint those materials that are fading or to replace those materials that are fading. And so of course I would intend our recommendation was to replace the things that are fading. So that's in the process of happening right now. The manufacturer has got, I believe, a 5-year warranty on that material from degrading, and it is just not held up.
I guess my question to follow up with Mr. Chappelle's would be, we go ahead and pay them even though it's an inferior product, and even though the warranty, we have a 5-year warranty, and when they install it, it don't even meet standards then?
So I understand your question, but we do feel we're holding enough money to get them to replace the items that are defective right now.
One concern you said about painting, for example, those rock climbing pieces that are there, those can't be painted. Those are something that would have to be replaced. But if they try to paint that, it'll just peel off or become slick and be unsafe for the children. Because it's supposed to have a textured feel to it anyway to prevent slippage. But I mean, they're already turning a white color, which you've probably already seen, and it hasn't even really been installed that long, to be honest with you.
Just be an ongoing maintenance issue as far as I'm concerned.
And we are asking them to replace that with a better, well, I say that, with something that should last longer. They guarantee this for 5 years. I don't know why it failed, but they've got to come back with something that lasts. And so that's where we're at today. And they've already replaced a component or two out there, so we're now just working our way through the rest of the playground equipment. Is basically what's happening.
So they're trying to decide, or have they made the decision on whether they're going to, as you said, they're going to try to repaint or replace it? I mean, I don't think there's any question as to what we're going to demand from them is a quality product to start with.
Right, and their comment was that they are willing to replace it. They mentioned painting it, we mentioned replace, they're willing to replace.
But again, I guess I come back to, we go ahead and pay them for doing that. Is it because of the time sensitivity here with the Parks grant from Parks and Wildlife? I mean,
so it's twofold. One of the parts to this equation here is that a lot of the money that's been held out is for retainage for subcontractors that have completed things like the asphalt that is acceptable, that the pavilion up there, things like that have worked out well. They're still holding retainage on that. This allows them to get some of that money back to their subcontractors, but allows us to retain enough money to finish up the components that we're concerned about.
I have a question. What is the time? When is it due based on the grant?
So what we're telling them is they need to be finished the second week in April, in case we want to do a grand opening the third week in April. Is what we're telling them right now, and they're at agreement with that. I don't know that they can get the landscaping done in that amount of time, but these other items I believe they can.
I'm just gonna say something that I've never done this before, but I just wanna know if this is new to me. Is this a common practice to pay somebody this much money with this much that's not done? You don't normally pay someone until they got the bulk of what's done. And you got all these problems that you said they're going to fix, but my thing is, as far as the council being responsible for taxpayers' money, do you think it's beneficial to be making decisions when you know the work's not done and you know the quality and you don't know what you're going to get? My concern is, as a council, do we want to look at that amount of money and you know what's undone and it's not finished, and you don't know what quality of work you're going to get? This is new to me, so you have to explain it to me because I don't understand. I'm not exactly sure about the timing, but if you're paying someone and we as a council know the problems are here and you still approve it.
This is extremely common to pay and hold retainage above what you think it'll cost to make the repairs, to bring it up to the standards you want to. And that's what we're doing. I agree with you that we're wanting it to be a better quality. We think the repairs out there are worth much less than retainage that we're holding, is the reason we're recommending this. And it is twofold. We're doing it because of Parks and Wildlife. But if you think about it, you're holding $330,000 for some climbing block. For what we've seen is some vegetation, some climbing blocks, some repairs to some playground equipment, and some drainage issues, and the lift station issue, in my opinion. So those are the major components that I've seen out there that we're holding this for.
So I'm just going to ask another question. So as far as the government bureaucracy, this is standard procedure to have this type of work that you're going to pay someone for, and you know it's wrong.
Well, one of the things, we do know it's wrong, and like I said, we've talked to them about it. And this is a big project, a lot of money. If it were a project, let's say, where a local vendor was a sub and provided the materials, but we're holding the money from the general contractor, and he can't pay the guys off that have already provided the materials. It maybe put somebody out of business. I mean, it's right to pay for this stuff, and it's right to hold enough retainage so that if they don't fix it, we can get somebody else to have. As far as the equipment that's faded or failed, the company's going to do that, but there's other things, lights and standards and so forth that somebody has provided. And I don't think the contractors paid them, but they're out hanging out there. Doesn't have to do with the performance of the job, but it's just the material part of it that probably should be paid so that we don't go into default with any of those. They could file a lawsuit.
I understand that. Has Andrew been involved in this at all? No. I just want to make sure. I have no problem with us paying. I just want to make sure that as a council that's being held accountable for to the taxpayers, that we're keeping the highest level of transparency and accountability that what we're supposed to do. I understand with the time frame, and if you all say that the $340,000 will cover it, I'm good with it. I just need to make sure, as a person that's signing off on this, that we're doing what's best for the city.
Let me follow up real quick with one that Councilman Walker had there, as far as what is the time frame that we're on with Texas Parks and Wildlife to get those funds. I mean, is it a next week deal? Is it how quick do we have to present that to them and show that this is paid for us to get our part back to them? I mean, how urgent is this?
Can I just interject that Anthony, it sounded like Anthony and William or the Spencer Group is maybe on a fast track trying to get it done for a grand opening in April. And we have, the last couple of days, we've discussed that, and we've already decided, to tell you all tonight, we've talked to some of you, but we've decided that we've prematurely scheduled that big grand opening party. We think there's so much out there to get done, we can't get it done by then. We don't want to put them in a thing of hurrying up trying to get this done for that. So we're going to postpone that grand opening in April because we think we're later on in the summer, maybe the end of the summer, fall. We already know that we're not going to open up the soccer fields for play because we need the growing season. So to have that and then still have issues that we haven't got fixed doesn't make sense to us. So we jumped the gun maybe on that. That would be my fault.
Well, it would be awful hard to open the park up, looks like, and have say the soccer fields. I mean, you'd have to be patrolling that at all times to keep people from getting out there on them. I think I think we'd have a real issue out there if it was opened up and it's not really ready to go yet. And I mean, you say you can play on the playground, but you can't play over here. You can't play over there, but you can play over here. Everybody gets out there, who's going to be the one that goes over and says, hey, get your kids off the playground? That's not the one you can play on. Well, how'd I know? So I think I agree with Ed that it definitely needs to be put off until it's ready.
Councilmember Mayor, Councilmember Walker, I just wanted to reiterate that going through a partial, this is more of a substantial completion. It's not saying the whole project is done yet. This is a standard process for a lot of large projects, mainly because what the city manager stated is when you have a lot of subconsultants or subcontractors, they do have payments, they have bills that they have to pay, and this allows those subs to get their money to pay all those bills. It alleviates a lot of chance of liens toward the project, but it doesn't alleviate the contractor who's doing the project from actually finishing it. We do have still a bunch of retainage, and there's also the performance bond to fall back on if there's even more.
And Lenny, again, this 229, the majority of that cost is all the equipment, correct?
It's a lot of the equipment, it's a lot of the building structures and things, but there are some vegetation items in that as well. So, it is closing out that part of it and just maintaining the retainage to cover the expenses or to cover what's left to be done.
And again, back to those climbing blocks, for example, I feel that it's going to be the manufacturer's responsibility to get us something other than what because they're going to try to probably turn around and they already have those sitting on a shelf ready just to ship you replacements, but hopefully they'll find a material that will resist the UV ray a lot better than what it's already doing now.
And that's actually the conversation we're having with them right now, is to make sure that we get something that holds up better and we're not replacing this every 6 months, because they didn't last long at all. And so something's wrong there. It's either a bad batch or it's something's wrong there. So that's what we're working on. And Councilman Walker, I mean, I hear you loud and clear. What you've done is given me a little bit of incentive to push harder at this, and I certainly appreciate that. That is very welcome. And I appreciate you being concerned about the finances of it. I am too. I mean, I don't want to spend the taxpayers' money in an unwise manner as well. We're really trying to be fair here as much as anything else, is really what we're trying to do.
What's a turnaround on that? Of course, we're going to go ahead with the replacement, I hope. That's what we'd be recommending anyways for the playground equipment. But for the turnaround, how soon would they come out and replace it?
Since we're still talking about, is it a manufacturer's problem, or is it a batch problem, or is it, I don't know the answer today to that question. I mean, that's what we are working on.
That's exactly what concerns me.
We just haven't got to the bottom of what it is right now. I mean, we went through this with some of the turning blocks out there, and actually the controller had problems at one time. And so we've done this once or twice before, and that's when we're pausing on just having them come right back out really quick, is we're trying to get the right thing back.
I just want to make one statement as we sit here and we look at these application for payment. There's a section that says balance to finish. And there's 47 items and then 2 additional items that we added on. And each one of those say 0 balance to finish. So I want the taxpayers to understand what we're paying, or what's being asked to be paid is for a completed project, or everything on here is balance to finish 0. And the only thing that we have left is what they call retainage. And we're being advised that there's enough retainage to finish this. I would not want to be a subcontractor being held up and not getting my money. So I completely understand why you're asking for the money to be paid today. But I want everybody to understand, we're saying basically that this is done, and we know it's not done.
If you look at the substantial completion, it comes attached with a list of punch list items that have to be finished, and that's why we do that, because we know it's not done. It's substantial, it's not completed.
I just want to make sure that the public knows that the only protection we have at this point is what we're holding back, and we're being advised that there are some things that have to be done, but these people need to be paid. The subcontractors need to be paid, and the only protection we have is the retainage that we've held, and we're being advised that that money would complete it, and plus there's a bond in place. So the project will be completed one way or another.
Okay, council, we have any further questions?
I'd like to also remind anybody that's interested that Landy didn't start out on this project with these people. You got interjected into the process well after it was underway. And I know it's very difficult. It's always difficult. My husband hates it when he gets a bike in the box. He wants you to bring it to him and let him tear it apart before he fixes it. He don't like you to start it. You know what I mean, as an analogy. And it is tough. I do have a question, Lanny. Who selected the playground equipment, and what kind of specs were presented, if you know, as to the quality of the equipment would be? You know, is there a better climbing wall? Did we miss it by $3,000 or $4,000 because someone opted for something? Do you see where I'm going with this? And I'm not blaming anybody, but who made the decision as to which particular climbing wall would be installed?
So that was before my time, but if you will allow me some time, I'll dig in the specs and find out what that was.
Since it's failed so quickly, more like 5 months instead of 5 years, I believe we would like to go back and if they're going to replace it, then at least let's make sure we're getting the quality that we anticipated getting the first go around.
Lenny, I just want to make one other statement and make clear. I'm actually the one that requested you be brought into the project, if I'm right. And so I'm not blaming you. I'm just letting you know how important your job is from here on out, because we're being asked to do something that does not feel comfortable.
Yeah, I got that too. It's not comfortable on this side either.
But I just want to let you know, I'm not saying it's your fault. I understand. And I wouldn't want to be one of the subcontractors waiting for my money. And so I do understand that portion of it, but I just want to make sure in your back pocket, you know that the taxpayers are back there with you, and so that's how important it is.
Yes, and I will say that one of the things that's been encouraging to me is, Eric Law has been much more receptive the last few weeks to get this done. And there comes a point in every game where everybody wants to get done. And if they know people are still leaning on them, you've got to want it. I'm not saying that changes anything and it makes it easier, but we are getting some cooperation. I do feel comfortable with that. We do have things in our back pocket to get it done. I have asked about the cost of the landscaping versus what we're holding, and they're thinking, believe it or not, they're thinking there's another $50,000 worth of work out there just in herbicides and getting that grass and getting the drainage back and things like that. So it's not like everybody's going into it blind. We know that there's money in that and that we're going to have to work on it to get it out, and that's just what we know right now. Also, the longer this thing drags out, the longer it gives us a chance to be nitpicky, and so it just makes it harder. So it is when it gets real difficult.
And also, when we get ready to do final acceptance on this, I would like Symmetry Turf to come before the council and present closeout documentation to this council and this city. Particularly, I request Mr. Bell to be here in front of us to do that presentation.
Certainly, we'll pass that on.
I think it's fair to say they've definitely been MIA the last year or so.
I think of a project this scale, I would think that Mr. Bell would want to continue to be present in front of this council and this city to also keep us abreast of what's going on with this big of a project.
I move that we approve.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion made by Mr. Jerry Walker, second by Mr. Galen Adams. Madam Secretary, please record the vote.
Councilman Chappelle,
Aye.
Squirrel, Dale,
No.
Aye.
Adams.
Aye.
This motion carries 4-1 in favor of approval. Pay request for Symmetry Turf for work at new sports complex. We'll now close this item and move on to our next item, 5, which is consider approval of pay request from JW Electric Incorporated for work at the new sports complex.
Thank you, Council, again. This is invoice for lighting that we had added to the playground equipment. This was for 3 light poles that were on what we call the north side of the playground area. We also added, just to get the coverage right, a light on the south side on the existing light pole that was there. We just added another light on there to make it a more even distribution throughout the playground. The reason we're not asking for a complete number here is because as it keeps raining and they put those man lifts up out there, they sink to the side when they're trying to put the heads on them out there. They've got all the poles up, they've got the wiring up to it, they've got the wiring pulled to the panels. They just don't have the lights, the LED lights that go up on the pole itself. And so we're asking for $30,536 of the $38,171 just to put those 3 lights in.
Letty, I see there's 3 light poles on the back of the playground by the woods. And I thought I remember y'all said then you're gonna put another one on the other by the parking, shining back the other way. Is that not happening, or?
We put one more light on the existing street light that was on the south side. So it's shining back that way.
You're satisfied with all the materials here?
Yes, sir, I am. And we've gone out and looked at that. There is some cleanup to be done as well around those poles too. And it takes about 2 weeks to dry that out there, and we get rain about every 10 days.
Hey, Lanny, so on those playground lights, will they, once the park is officially open to the public, I'm assuming we're gonna leave the park open. So will those lights just be on some type of photo eye or timer, so they'll automatically come on each night?
Yeah, yes, and they're hooked into the panel where you can turn them off if you want to, or turn them on and adjust the timing if you want to as well.
Let me ask Ricky, and so Councilman Chappelle said he assumed, I was assuming we were probably gonna lock the gates after dark, and then open them early in the morning.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So basically, our ordinance, our city parks are closed from midnight until 5:30 a.m. So I would assume that that would fall underneath our park ordinance.
So we need to talk about how we're gonna close those gates. 'Cause I think we, out there that far, we need to close them, or we'll wake up to vandalism and so forth.
I agree with that. I've, just in the last couple of weeks before we start getting those gates locked, I actually went out and witnessed the kids out there skateboarding, jumping off the bandstand, and they're out on the soccer fields already. So it's going to be important that we get that locked.
I absolutely agree with that, and so we can come up with some type of measure to have that, whether it's PD, do a drive-by and help us out, close them at midnight. You know, that's an option. I've talked to Chief about as well.
Since the chief isn't here tonight, and his lieutenant is, we'll just assign it to them. So I'm getting that stare from.
I think what we should do is budget for a couple motorized gates on timers, controls, so they'll automatically close time of day, open time of day, that type of deal. Or the PD and city can also have a garage clicker where they can come up, and if it's after hours, all they got to do is punch it and go in.
I would agree that's a good idea as well, but we still would have to have someone go through and make sure the air is clear before we close them. But absolutely, that would make things easy.
I think the kids are going to go around the gates. It's not fenced and they're going to get in there if they want to do stuff. And if they want to skateboard, a night or two ago, I got run over by a skateboarder going into Aldi's, and the kids are using the sidewalks. And you look around and you want kids to have a good time, and that is private property, I guess. But we're going to have to. I don't know what we're going to do to keep. That's a big old park and a lot of places to hide.
Well, my point about the electric gates, though, inside when you're leaving, there's a proximity sensor that would be put in the ground. So even if the gates lock at, say, midnight, somebody's still there, when they get ready to leave, they're not going to be trapped in there. The gate will automatically open from the inside and still let them exit the facility.
Question. I don't know if it's the right time to ask it, but it's on my mind. Have we discussed security cameras there?
I think it's something worth looking into. As we have on a couple of other soccer fields around town where we've had them drive in the trucks over the soccer field. I don't know if you knew about that. And so that's another reason why I'm concerned about those gates. I mean, kids walking in is one thing, but if you're driving in and driving over the field doing donuts is a whole nother venture.
I also noticed, I was out last night looking, and we didn't put lights. We've got a 3/4 mile loop and a mile loop on the loop on the trail, and on the back part of it, there's no lights along the trail. So if you go, if you just had some like they do in Heritage Park, and the policeman drove through at night, there'd be lights they could see across there. Without those, it's really dark back across there. So I don't know if we want to add, but it was really obviously not there. You know?
And since we're talking about safety, again, I've been out there a couple of times and observed, both times I was out there observed, vehicles are coming through there and using it as a cut through, and they're flying through there. If we're going to be concerned about the safety of our kids, we're going to do speed bumps or something, indentions in the street to slow them down, something, because they're just coming through there, and if they know both gates are open, and even if the back gate's not open, they're still, when they come in that main gate off 271, they're flying. And I witnessed 2 trucks. One came through with a bass boat on the back of it on a Sunday afternoon, and the other one was just a car flying through there. Luckily, all the kids were up by the playground, but when that facility has more family members out there after this thing opens to the public, we could have some liability issues out there.
Just to make a comment, Ricky, y'all are doing a great job. But I believe it was a couple of weeks ago when the ice was out, maybe last month, when and some kids had gone out there and the soccer park, is it Journey Park it's called, where they play soccer now? And they were doing all of these donut center, okay. That looked really bad over there. But for a $6.8 million project, if you go out there and they put up this turf, we'll have a lot to explain trying to have it fixed again. We're gonna have to think about it.
So I agree with all the comments. There's some things that we need to discuss moving forward before we take that up. Point well taken.
Maybe there'll be some funds available through some of this new or surveillance cameras that we could use in a park. Who knows? I'm sure Mikhail will be looking into that, so we never know.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Ricky. We appreciate it.
I'll move that we pay the request from JW Electric.
I'll second that motion.
Motion is made by Mr. Galen Adams, second by Mr. Tim Dale. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. We'll now close that item. We'll now move on to item 6, which is consider approval of substantial completion recommendation of new sports complex.
Sorry. Once again, this is MHS's recommendation for substantial completion. There is a list of punch list items that are noted on the back of this that still have to be completed. And of course, items can be added to that as we go forth. But what this does, this part of this that they note says it starts the 1-year warranty once the city council accepts the project. So with respect to that, if that's up to you. I just wanted to mention that is in the letter, that it requests that we start the 1-year warranty period at the time of substantial completion here. You can modify your motion if you want to have substantial completion so that we can get to the Parks and Wildlife, with the exception of the turf, which is there.
On this letter from William right here, it says, please note that the 1-year warranty period will not begin until council accepts the project. Is it accepting it complete, or is it?
I'm sorry, it would be accept complete. I just want to make sure that we understand where we're at, and that we're not accepting this project as a complete project at this time, is what I'm trying to make clear, and I may have said that wrong.
Is it, a couple of people have asked the question, and then we got off the sideline on it. On the grant, is there a time limit that we have to apply for all our money from them, or can that wait a month or two without any penalty?
So I did not ask that question before I came. The March was the deadline. The end of March was the deadline the last time I asked that question. With everything that's happened with COVID and Snowvid and everything else, I don't know if it's maintained that, but the idea was to get it in March so that we could submit it and get the return back by June or July.
What funds are we expecting?
She said a little over 300-something thousand.
That's out of the total. We had two $500,000 grants, if I recall, $1 million total. So that's out of the remaining balance on both.
So is that's the retainage actually we got? Probably.
What was that number?
She said 111,327, and that's really just your reimbursement from the Parks and Wildlife. But that's what's left out of that $1 million that grant that you totally.
And if we only have 350,000 left, that would be where that come from, probably, huh? Or have we got a negative amount somewhere that's going to fill?
The rest of it comes from the remaining bond proceeds. that we had from that grant to pay for that.
Well, so my question is do we have 350,000 total retainage, or do we have this reimbursement from the bond, or from the grant, and then this, so we actually have $600,000?
Right now, we have $716,000 left in that fund.
We pay 2, and then we'll be down, and then we're gonna get this reimbursement.
Yeah, then we have 111,000 left, and then we have the storage shed money that we still need to pay out of there, the disc golf course, there's still some left. And then, there'll be about $55,000 left in there after all that.
So this reimbursement money will be ours to add to some of the things that didn't get put in the project. Got it?
Mikhail, do you remember the exact deadline date for the submission? That's the number I've been certain, or remembering as well.
So you're saying you have basically to the end of the month?
Yes, sir.
Lenny, on this letter to Symmetry Turf from MHS, where it lists some of the punch items, I notice this letter is dated January 28, 2021, so I know, looking through this, I think you and Ricky have an additional list that has more punch items than this actually reflects.
We do, and we sent some more over this week, and like I said, these things get added as you keep going. It's not, we're not complete, but every time we see a drainage problem, you know, the ground's settling out there still some from all the earthwork. When you have a drainage problem, you have to go out there and fill in those depressions. Like I said, we still got some things to do.
So this 1-year warranty period will not begin until the city accepts the whole project.
Yes, sir, and I read it wrong. That's what I was saying. We don't need to accept it. The 1-year warranty does not need to happen until you are completely in agreement that it's in good shape and you're willing to accept it.
I agree.
Do we have any further questions on this item? Now I'll open the floor for a motion.
I will make a motion that we accept the project as substantially complete, with the exception of the note that the 1-year warranty will not go into effect until we take it 100% complete.
I will second that.
I have a motion by Mr. Galen Adams, second by Mr. Henry Chappelle. Madam Secretary, please record a vote.
I have a question, Mayor. Just because I'm not clear, and I'm not saying this is the wrong thing or anything, I just want to be clear. When we vote, are we voting, would that also, Galen, need to include did you say the fields, we have to make sure the fields?
I think the fields are a completely separate deal, are they not, Lenny? I mean, they're saying that they'll need a complete summer grow on them, and so we're not getting the fields until September, right?
The fields, no, we're not getting the fields until they're complete. I don't know if that's September or June, but whenever they get complete and whenever the drainage is resolved, whenever the grass comes into the stand that's specified, and we have that complete coverage like we're supposed to have, that's when.
And is there some sort of a warranty on the fields? I know they're when we do finally take them, do they have a year starting? I mean, and maybe I don't even know how to ask the question.
So traditionally, that's a hard question to ask, because what you do is you establish that grass and you get it growing to a mature grass and a mature stand. And then at that point, it's hard to come back and say it died because you had a drought and you didn't water. But you have to come to a point that you get it. Yes, if it goes out there and it settles and you have a drainage problem again, they're coming back to fix it and they have to redo the turf and everything with it.
Lenny, Ricky and I were talking as we were out looking at it the other day, and he pointed out, he's got that eye and I'm missing it, but if you look at the goals that are sitting out there, they got one end down and the other end up, and they're not level. And he pointed out that shows that the ground's not level, and that's got to be leveled. It's not just the grass coming in, but the field's got to be level before.
Yes, sir. And I think about 2 months ago, those looked a lot more level. And that's kind of my point of the settlement. I mean, if you don't get the compaction right when you put it down, then you're going to have settlement. And we've had it. And that's one reason that this is almost a blessing the grass is not established, so that we can continue under their maintenance to get it, and then we're not opening until fall, so that we can make sure that this thing's acceptable.
So when we do take this, like I said, so we do have some time to clarify that as to what we consider 100% complete, and the fields, if they're not right, we're not taking it, right?
I agree, and it sounds like we're all going to be a part of that final inspection too.
It sounds like we're going to have a bunch of us out there.
So, before we take a vote, Mayor, I have a clarification here. So on the third page here, I'm looking here on the MHS letter to Symmetry, it says in the last paragraph, the 1-year warranty period will not begin until the city council accepts the project as the substantially complete. So we got to make sure that Mr. Adams' amendment is understood, that we are not accepting this tonight. If we approve this substantial completion, we are not saying also that we are going to start our 1-year period, warranty period.
Yeah, absolutely. My motion stated that I accept it as substantially complete, but I do not accept it as 100% complete, and the warranty will not engage until we are accepting it 100% complete, period.
Is that
Carrie,
clear?
does that sound good to you?
You'll have to go back to the contract for a lot of that, but I tend to agree with Lanny. You're not, that's just a magic word in the law, substantial complete. And then you do your punch list, and then you'll release the retainage and all that. But you'll have to go back to the contract as far as the timeline for that warranty. I don't know what it says. It's been so long ago since that contract. And it's an AIA contract to begin with, so it's pretty standard, on that. But that's the kicker of what's in that contract. But generally when you take it, when you take control of it. But normally you brought up so many questions about substantial completion, but your expert, and that's all I can look to with these two guys, your expert engineer and your architect. If they make those recommendations, then it's hard for me to say, I can't. That's not, that's what they told you, and that's what they recommend. But the contract prevails on as far as the warranty. So there again, I still have to go with what your expert told you. I can't. The punch list, I've seen punch lists from here to you, Henry, that could have been done in 30 minutes. And some that were, I could have gone out, I thought I could go out and fix, took years to fix, whatever. So I can't comment on what any of these are. That grass deal is unique to this project. And Lanny answered that as well as you can. You can only take the horse to the edge of the water and say, get you a drink. But after that, the grass, that's a tough one. Whatever. If it's some agronomist says, hey, that grass is in good a shape as it's going to get, they can do it. It's probably the edge, you're there. If we let it die, or we don't take care of it, or hogs dig it up, or whatever, probably we just bought it. There's just some unique issues in this particular project. I don't know if you can totally answer. The contract's going to prevail. but your experts have told you that's what to do. So it's hard for me to contradict what they tell you to do.
Just a question, should the contract be reviewed, in your opinion? Just to make sure the clarification on it before?
I mean, when the warranty period, yeah, I don't have a copy of it. Lanny pull it tomorrow. And I know the engineer, the architect got it because he's one of them.
Maybe. I have a question. Contract, where is the contract? Where's the copy of it?
So I've sent PDF copies of the contract over here. I have copies in my office. So we have copies several places of the contract.
Could we take a break and go get the copy of it and we come back and look at it and then make what you're making the decision on?
Well, what I was gonna say is the letter that's recommended in front of you says that the warranty, 1-year warranty will not begin until city council accepts the project. You're not accepting the project tonight. So you know that your 1-year warranty is not starting.
Hey, Lanny, but there's, William's got two different contradictions there. His first little one-page letter says what you just said, but on his 3-page letter that says final punch list to Mr. Eric Law at Symmetry Sports Construction says a different thing. In the last paragraph, it says the 1-year warranty period will not begin until the city council accepts the project as substantially complete.
So in this motion, can we say that we're gonna go with the cover letter here and not the letter that's in the back? I mean, if you wanna do that,
I think that's the point that you should do. I mean, you can say that or whatever. If we have some questions about it, we'll revisit it. But that's what if you're not comfortable, that's what you should do right now. I've never really seen a big contradiction. It's always been acceptance and then the year starts or whatever. I mean, I've never seen.
I think we all have to agree that this thing has not been easy to go through, period. And that and the end of it doesn't look like it's any easier than the beginning.
I think that's why everyone has a knee-jerk reaction on all of it, because of the uncertainty in the past. And now we're getting down close to the end of it, and we definitely don't want to get bit twice.
Okay, the clarification is we're gonna vote on the amendment that Councilman Adams made with this agenda item, and motions have been made. We're gonna go ahead at this time and take a vote.
Councilman Chappelle,
Yes.
Sproul,
No.
Dale,
No.
Walker, Adams.
Yes.
This motion fails 3-2. We'll now go ahead and close that item. Move on to item 7 on the agenda. Item 7 on the agenda is a public hearing and consider approval ordinance 2021-2, request of Roberto Monroy, applicant, to rezone lots 1 and 2, Senior Community Edition, Phase 1, a 9.65 acre tract of land situated in the prior hearing survey, and being all of the remainder of that certain 20.594 acre tract of land called Exhibit A, from Planned Development District to Multifamily District, located at the intersection of Green Hill Road and Senior Community Drive, Mount Pleasant, Texas.
Mayor and council members, this is a zoning request. Mr. Monroe has brought this forward to you. It's in an existing planned development district, and couldn't really locate the ordinance for this district. I'm not sure that I was able to find an ordinance that was written specific to that, that had the actual conditions of the planned development district. But what we did find was, I did locate the minutes that describe the district, and that district was really mainly for, it was the area for the senior adult, I guess it's not a retirement place, but it's like a nursing home combination of different things probably there. But also the land in the back that it's mentioned, this larger area, the 9.35 acres is to the back of the property. That was intended under the PD to be used for potential more of the same type of facility, or it could be used for these cottage type senior living facilities in the back. So the PD was sort of geared toward this one single type of use. However, that's not occurred. The property's been sold off. Mr. Monroe bought the property recently, and his intent is on the front. I don't have maps up here to show you. You do have them in the packet. His intent is the lots that are out on Green Hill Road itself. There's one lot there. There's two lots that are actually platted. It was platted along with the senior nursing facility. Those two lots, the one that's to the south of the road, his intent is to replat those two lots and just do single family there, do single family homes. On the north side, the lot that's to the north of that, he intends to build basically a small, what I call a quadplex, probably about 4 units there that'll be connected. There's one to the north of it, directly to the north of that. It's already in existence. It's in a neighborhood service district there. But this multifamily zoning will accommodate both of those. It allows for single family, allows for the quadplex. And also the 9.35 acres that it's to the rear of the property, that portion was not platted. It was left out of the original plat with the nursing home. And that portion, he intends to try to build a smaller apartment complex into the rear of the property there. So that's his intent, and that's why he requested that the zoning accommodate all those uses under one umbrella, and that's what we're bringing forward to tonight. So, well, the road itself, the senior community drive, goes all the way back to it accommodates that. It goes all the way back. Now they'll have to, at the very end of it, they'll probably have to put like a cul-de-sac, half of a cul-de-sac. Yeah, it'll have to be a radius there, but they'll actually have, if he builds the apartment complex to the rear, then they'll have to put in fire lanes that'll actually come around and circulate all the way through there and back out. So he'll be coming back with that, with a site plan that we'll look at. He's built other apparently apartment complexes. He's told me he's built them in the area, like in Pittsburgh and a couple other places. He's had experience doing that. And he's also a single-family home builder, and he's done the multifamily also. So basically, I wanted to point out one thing about this also that we're kind of coming up on pretty soon, is that these changes in zoning that didn't really occur when this PD was put in, basically we're changing the land use plan, the future land use plan on the comp plan. But we haven't really amended that plan in many, many years. And so every time, I wanted to point it out, when we do change the zoning on a property, you're effectively changing the land use plan. And so I wanted to make that statement to the record that when we come back in, when we redo this whole plan, all these little zoning changes that occurred in the last 15 years or so, they have effectively changed the land use plan, and we're going to have to make those corrections. So, and when we do our comp plan, we'll correct that future land use map. And in the future, when you get these kinds of requests that actually change the land use map, we'll have to indicate that to you, that effectively with the zoning ordinance that you are amending the future land use plan, and we'll be able to do that at the moment that you decide to approve a zoning change and it's contradicted toward it, then we can actually make that change in real time and change the comprehensive land use map after it occurs. So we'll keep that updated from this point on, once we get this map updated. So with that, we did send out notices within 200 feet of the subject property. We received 3 notices back, replies that were against the zoning change. I think you've got those in their packet, and we did receive one that was in favor of that. Did take it to the Planning and Zoning Commission on February 9th, and they voted to approve it by a vote of 4-0. We had one commissioner that had a conflict of interest and had to step away from the case. They were all there, but she had to step away. So at this point, this is a public hearing. I'll be glad to answer any questions of staff you may have.
Did he already provide you with the site plan and a rendering of what these units are gonna look like?
Oh, he has not.
That will come back when he does that. Then when he goes to build them, then that review of his plans of those will be, that'll be a separate deal that Robert will look at.
We'll get a development plan from him, and he's got a substantial amount of engineering to do on the backside. There's a drainage issue. There's a drainage, basically almost a detention pond in the back. And that detention pond, we've had some issues. I've heard from some of the neighbors out there that the bigger issue, or a bigger issue with them, has actually been the drainage back in the back of the property. And effectively, anything that gets built back there, whether it be apartments or if he comes back with single family back there, he's going to have to address that drainage and try to retain that water back there. So once construction starts, we should be able, through the engineering process, correct some of the drainage in the back of that property.
And at that time, I guess that's when the issue of a lift station and the water and sewer, all that would enter then for a project of that magnitude back there?
Yeah, we'll come back in with the engineering construction plans for that, and we'll be reviewing that at that time.
Robert, here you got 3 individuals that are against. Can you tell us, or do you know, looking at this plat that you provided us, are they right adjacent to the proposed changes?
I can tell you that Mr. Sherbert, he's the lot that's on right on Green Hill. He's right below the southern tract. He's adjacent to it. The others were the ones that I spotted were across the street in the other subdivision that's directly across the street.
Is this the only 3 people that were, that's going to be affected, or did you have more letters go out to other residents in the area?
Yeah, I didn't give you the total count. No, we probably had more than 20 maybe letters that went out surrounding this area. And I looked at the calculation, this didn't come up to that 20% level, so it wasn't effectively that many in the total land area that you have to calculate.
You've got the whole left part of the country club going out there, and that I'm sure had to be notified there on the left-hand side of the road. Yeah.
We sent notices all the way out to there. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Mayor and Council, I'd like to just mention one thing that Robert said that's significant. It's a significant change we're starting to do. It'll clean up a lot of things over the years, but he said he couldn't find an ordinance on this development that was passed, this zoning change whenever it was done. But actually, we've not found any ordinances that I know of, unless you haven't yet told me, but when we've changed zoning in the past. And that zoning is an ordinance, and to amend it, we need to pass an ordinance to actually do it. So what we've done is just by a vote of the council at a council meeting, change zoning, and done that with the PNC. So we need to do ordinances. We will from now on bring them to you. And in the ordinance, it spells out what it is you're doing and what the conditions are. So when you go back, you know what was intended to be there. Right now, we know it got changed to a plan development. We don't know what the conditions are, what was allowed or not. So we'll start doing that. But that's one of the big things that hasn't been done here for 30 years.
Okay, council, we have any further questions? Madam Secretary, do we have anyone online, public? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close this part of the public hearing and consider approval on this ordinance. This time, the floor is open for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we consider the approval of ordinance 2021-2, the request of the Robert Monroy applicant to rezone lots 1 and 2, Center Community Edition, has been presented tonight on the 9.65 acre tract of land.
I'll second that.
With a motion by Mr. Tim Dale, second by Mr. Henry Chappelle. Madam Secretary, please record a vote.
Councilman Adams,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Dale,
Aye.
Sproul,
Aye.
Chappelle.
This motion carries unanimously. We'll now close that item. We will now move on to item 8 on the agenda. Item 8 is the public hearing and consider approval of ordinance 2021-3 for the annexation of the 7.94 acre tract of land and a 0.16 acre tract of land situated in the L.H. Bradley Survey, abstract number 21, Titus County, Texas. Said tract being part of FM 1001 is shown on the Texas Department of Transportation highway maps and located in Titus County, Texas, being a total of 8.10 acres of land and generally located on the south side of Interstate 30 east of FM 1001.
Mayor and Council, this is an annexation request. It's from the group Travel Plaza LLC. They are currently under construction with a Travel Plaza at this location. They were out of the city. They really want to tie into our sewer, and we can accommodate them, but to accommodate them, they have to be annexed into the city. They've also agreed with that annexation to basically let us review their building plans. They have turned in building plans to us prior to being in, so we have been able to review those plans, and we've looked at those. And there should be some permitting as soon as we get them annexed. There'll be some permitting with that, so we'll have some control over what they're doing out there. They have agreed. They came in under this particular section of the code on voluntary annexation. We have to negotiate a service plan with them, and they came in with the city with staff. Ms. Thatcher was there to sit down and go over the service plan with them and what we can provide and what they're willing to accept. And they accepted the general service plan that we have used for everybody else on annexation. So they're in agreement with that. And again, we had followed the schedule, and you approved that resolution that brought us to this point tonight, which requires us to hold a public hearing, and then you have the option to approve the annexation, and we'll move forward from there. With that, it is a public hearing. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
Floor is open for questioning by the council and any other public.
How far along are they on that completion, and did the, if just per se we didn't for some reason approve this annexation, would they have to put in their own septic system at that point? And did they start this project not knowing what kind of septic they would have?
Well, the issue was that whatever was there before, I don't have the history. I know everybody else knows it, but I didn't, but I found out. Apparently there was some agreement. The existing facility that was there was tied into the city sewer. They were already tied into the sewer. So what they were doing, there was their understanding that they had the ability to continue to tie into the sewer. But they did come to us and talk to us about that, and when they requested to talk to our utilities people, and then Mr. Thatcher talked to them, and we said, you're going to tie in. You can't tie in unless you're annexed into the city. So that's what it's brought about, this situation. So, but they've been real receptive to it. There's no big issues with them doing it, about being annexed, and they feel like they want to be annexed.
That certainly explains it. I didn't know that the previous establishment was tied in, and that's the reason I was scratching my head.
That's where the little store was, remember? Right there, when you turn back and come on Big Tech a few years ago. And I think there'll be a good business for, yes. And will they tie into the existing lift station there at Big Tech's that we have?
Well, the guys can answer, but they're coming across to that lift station as far as I know. They're going to tie into that. It'll be tied into that system right there.
I also want to say that it was Anthony and Robert that caught that and asked them to come in and talk about it, and that's when we told them you need to be annexed. These guys caught it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good work.
One other explanation too, just to tell you, when you can't annex anything unless you're adjacent to it, and we didn't when they brought it in. When we did Big Techs, which you remember we just did that, we didn't have that adjacency because we were on their side of the road with the annexation. So we had to go back and ask them to go back and do that second little piece, that 0.016 acres of roadway there, to make sure that we were adjacent to that. So we need to remember that every time we annex in the future, that in the state law says you can't annex it to the center of the road anymore. You got to either take it, you got to stay on your side, or you got to take the whole road. So it need, for that sake, sometimes when you take roads, you're also taking maintenance. So you got to think through this whole thing when you're doing things about the annexation.
Thank you, Robert.
Madam Secretary, do we have anything from the public? Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and if we don't have anything else from the council, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing section of this, and we'll now move on to consider approval on this item.
I'll make a motion that we consider the approval of ordinance 2021-3 for the annexation of the 7.94 acres of land and the 0.16 acre tract of land situated in Aspect 1 as has been described and presented to us tonight.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by Mr. Tim Dale, second by Mr. Henry Chappelle. Madam Secretary, please record a vote.
Councilman Adams,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Dale,
Aye.
Aye.
Chappelle.
Aye.
This motion carries unanimously. We'll now close that item and move on to item 9 on the agenda. Item 9 is to consider approval of ordinance 2021-4 adopting the 2018 edition of the International Building, Fire, Residential, Plumbing, Mechanical, Fuel, Gas, Energy, Existing, and Property Maintenance Codes with local amendments and 2017 National Electric Code.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. So this ordinance is essentially based on our discussion that we had about a month ago, I think it was, during the snow week. And everything is essentially the same. The only two items that we did add is under section 2 of the actual ordinance. If you're looking at the actual ordinance itself, under section 2, it authorizes the fire department to invoke fees if someone's doing a land clearing operation and it catches fire and they have to respond and use resources to actually extinguish the fire. And the other one is under section 4, which is chapter 94, the exceptions to the fireworks. We added the 2 existing fireworks stands that were annexed into the city, which was Hess Fireworks Superstation and TNT Fireworks Supercenter. Hess is located on 67 and TNT is located on US 271 South. So other than that, all other local amendments and code adoptions are the same that were submitted during the discussion we had about a month ago.
So those fireworks stands are basically just grandfathered in.
Yeah, if you kind of read it, basically it says they can remain in place unless they're sold, destroyed, abandoned, or something to that extent.
I have one question, I guess, Chief, on the, so if an individual was burning something and just say a brush pile, clearing off 10 acres and they're burning the brush pile and they notified y'all they were going to burn and it did get out of control, they're still charged, or how's that?
Generally, it's not like the leaves in somebody's front yard. It's like a land clearing operation, and they set it on fire, and then a neighbor calls and says, hey, smoke's blowing into my property. And we get out there, and all they had was a pickup truck and a 5-gallon diesel, and they have no way to put it out. And then it ties up all of our apparatus for an hour or two trying to do that. So that's what we're just trying to recoup any cost. If we have to call somebody in for overtime to staff an engine instead of taking everything out of service. It's similar to what we do when we respond to the wrecks. It's the same schedule that we'd use on that.
And you can you'll use your own discretion whether you do charge or whether you don't. And
yes, if we can go out there and knock it down with tank water, and we're not going to charge them, but we're having to be there for an hour or two, and
fixing to burn up 2 or 3 houses or a barn, or
like I said, if we get a complaint on it, there's been some piles burning this week that are pretty good sized piles, but nobody's called and complained on it. So
I guess again, just as long as you're called out, don't mean that you'll necessarily charge. It just depends on several different factors there, and you'll make a determination on whether there'll be a fee assessed or not.
Correct. Like I said, if it takes us a lot of time and effort, then we'll have to assist it.
All right, thanks a lot.
Tim, in light of what you just asked, auditors just brought that up, so you'll probably have to come up with something, formula or something, because he a while ago that it's not included. It's what he's auditing for, so be thinking about some little, formula. This is how it's so they can improve.
And basically, there's a schedule that comes with fire recovery. This company we use to collect off the interstate when we make the wrecks, they have a schedule that we've been going by, so we could just use that. It's $450 for the first hour, and then $400 after that. I can submit that to Darlene, I guess.
I just bring that up in light of what he's.
That was just my only question. If you're burning 10 acres out here or 5 acres, you've got a couple of brush piles, and an individual drives by and they call and say, hey, it looks like this is getting out, and y'all get called out there, how'd you take for that individual to get charged a fee for, and really nothing was wrong? And I understand.
And that's the deal. I mean, if somebody just drives by and says, hey, there's some brush pile burning, and they're like, well, it's not bothering you, so. It's more about the neighborhoods. It's not just somebody driving by and seeing it.
Is it in the ordinance in the city of Mount Pleasant that if people are going to do some burning beyond a leaf pile in the front yard of a house, that they need to, is it part of the ordinance they have to notify you guys that there will be burning, like trees that are pushed over, that sort of thing? Is there, or is it just okay?
It's pretty much, there's not a permit for burning. So, and one of the things, this may be a less of a problem with being out in the community. John and them are out looking. So if he sees something, maybe somebody piling a pile up, getting ready to burn it, and it's like, hey, if you get a complaint on this, they're going to have to come put it out. And if they have to put it out, they're going to charge you for it. So, we're hoping to work with the building department to help maybe prevent it from happening, instead of having to react to it.
But I think to Sherry's question, there is some exception. You can't burn plastic and treated wood, and there's several things can't be burnt there at your home with the leaves or whatever. Isn't that correct, Chief?
That's correct. We follow the state's guidelines on outdoor burning, and it basically says you can burn your leaves and limbs, your trash. We have trash pickup, so burning your trash is not acceptable. Mattresses, burning the insulation off a wire, anything that gives off a toxic black smoke, pretty much natural product, limbs, leaves, stuff like that.
Okay, thanks, Chief. We appreciate it. Thank you, guys over there. Okay, if we have no more comments or questions, we'll go ahead and open the floor for a motion.
I make a motion, we consider approval of ordinance 2021-4 adopting the 2018 edition of the International Building, Fire, Residential, Plumbing, Mechanical, Fuel, Gas, Energy, Existing and Property Maintenance Code with local amendments and the 2017 National Electric Code.
I second the.
We have a motion by Mr. Henry Chappelle, second by Mr. Jerry Walker. Madam Secretary, please record a vote.
Councilman Adams.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Dale.
Aye.
Sproul.
Aye.
Chappelle.
Motion carries unanimously. We'll now close that item and move on to our next item on the agenda, which is item 10, consider approval of School Street elevated storage tank change order.
Good evening, Mayor, fellow council members. Before you is a change order for $103,650 to the contractor who's performing the rehabilitation of the School Street elevated tank. During the construction of the project, it was discovered that the bid documents that had one item that stated the height of the tank was incorrect. So the contractor approached the city with a change order for the difference in materials for 44 feet of additional elevation that wasn't accounted for during the bidding process. We've gone back and forth with the contractor at least 3 times to lower the initial amount. It is my understanding that the first time the change order came was 160-ish thousand. When I saw it was 140,000, so we went back to the contractor saying we wouldn't accept it at that amount. He came back with this 103,000, which is proportionate with the bid, and we feel is appropriate for this type of work and for the difference in amount.
So how was this, in the bid, how was it found, or?
In review of the bid documents, there was one document that was an inspection report that listed the height of the tank, and it was incorrectly listed at the height. When we were reviewing the proposal, our consultant that's doing the project management went out there, resurveyed the tank to verify the elevation. It was indeed different from what was in the documents in the bid package.
So, Andrew, the city should have a set of engineering documents that were provided to the city when that tower was completed. Do we not have that on file? Because that will reflect the exact elevations and heights of all the legs, et cetera.
We have also found some other documents that did verify what the elevation was, and that the survey actually verified. Going through our records, it's pretty sparse, and as a matter of fact, only hard copies that are going through an attic, so we don't have a lot of stuff scanned, so it's very readily available for us. And I wasn't here during the design or the bidding of this, and probably was the case that those documents were readily available for the consultant.
And one other thing, that tower should have stamped on it somewhere on the tower itself, the information as far as the height, the date of installation, et cetera.
That, again, I wasn't involved in, so I'm not sure what exactly is on the tower.
Right, but when they went out there to put their eyes on it, whoever was doing these bids, they should have identified that at that point. That's what I'm saying. When anytime a tower facility is erected, they must put on that tower a stamp, or somewhere they stamp the manufacturer of that tower, the height of the tower, when it was manufactured, etc.
I think one of the things, I think the height was taken off of like you said, an inspection report that somebody did, and that we paid to do it, and they got it wrong. And so the engineers that did this, got the information from another report. I don't know if the correct procedure is, and Brittany's going to tell us here, you got to go inspect the thing, or you got to remeasure it or whatever. But I think they went on assumption that whoever did that inspection report had it right the first time. But Brittany, you want to speak on that? This is Brittany Smith with KSA.
Could I get you to mash the button in front of you, ma'am?
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. To answer your question, the record drawings were not available, and the nameplate was no. It's been painted and multiple times. You couldn't read it.
So it was there. It's just over time it had either deteriorated or just wear and tear from the mother nature, I guess.
That's correct.
Mr. Thatcher, and your professional expert, what do you think about it as far as taking place?
Let me choose my words carefully. I think based on the things I've found here in the city and different things, this is typical stuff. We haven't kept good records and plans and things and documents and ordinances and it goes on and on. And so this is not a surprise to me that it happened. It's disappointing, but and these things happen, but we, part of it's our fault for not having the information for.
I will say this, when it was presented to us, Lanny, remind me, were we 300 and something thousand under budget?
Yeah, that's what I was just fixing to ask you also, Councilman Adams. If I recall, that came in way under bid, and we kind of questioned, wow, was they hungry, or why was the...
That's correct. The bid did come in low under the engineer's estimate, and with this change order, it is still under the engineer's estimate.
I'd like to make a recommendation, though, for future projects of this nature, that at some point we budget the money to have an engineering firm map all these towers so we have correct heights, dimensions, et cetera.
Well, from now on, we've got our engineer, our city engineer in place here too, so we're gonna count on you, Andrew.
We'll make sure there's appropriate dimensions in these things.
I agree, Councilman Chappelle.
And while we're doing work on this storage tank, it will be stamped. Correct?
Correct.
Is it, or let me know, is it the tank there behind Super One? Is this the one we're referring to? Question on that, I still see we have some VHF antennas still on there. Have we determined what we're gonna do to get those off so they can continue their job when they get ready to do the exterior of that tank?
That is actually being coordinated with the contractor and the providers, and then I think right now T-Mobile has come in to look at upgrading their facilities at the same time.
But I was gonna say, all the wireless carriers already have their antennas off. They've already got little small mobile cows out there with their antennas off of there. Right, we got up there, as I'm assuming, is the cities or some first responders antennas that we need to get off of there. And do we have a plan to put that on a makeshift or temporary tower as well?
I apologize, you asked me that question a week or two ago. I did check with Lanny. Now, Lanny, it may be a different answer now, but I think he told me what's up there now is, it was determined that it'd be a workaround thing and they wouldn't take them off. Is that right?
No, those should be removed. The contractor is coordinating with, I believe, the city's appropriate person for that.
So am I correct in, I don't like to use the word assume, but are all those antennas on that tanks, well, they're coming off, but are those all the city's antennas?
Are they, Anthony, are they?
Yes, sir. The antennas there apparently are the cities, and I talked with Joe, and they are working with our provider, I guess, for that, take care of antennas, and they're going to be removing them, and they're working together on that.
But they're going to remove them and put them on a temporary tower so we don't interrupt our two-way communications.
I believe that is exactly right. They're going to do them so we still have the access to the fire and the police department.
Thank you, sir. Do council have any further questions on this item? Okay, the floor is open for a motion.
I move for the approval of the School Street elevation storage tank change order tonight.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion made by Mr. Jerry Walker, second by Mr. Henry Chappelle. Madam Secretary, please record a vote.
Councilman Adams,
Aye.
Aye.
Dale,
Aye.
Sproul, Chappelle.
This motion carries unanimously. We'll now close this item and move on to our next item on the agenda. Our next item is to consider approval of engineering contract with Plummer for discharge proposal of regulatory services at wastewater, Phase 1.
Good evening again, Mayor and council members. What this is actually a contract of not to exceed $100,000 that be issued by separate task orders to Plummer. The one that was attached is the first task order for independent study and modeling analysis for the Big Cypress Creek to determine what a maximum discharge of wastewater effluent would be into the creek. As you recall, with our expansion of our sewer treatment plant, we are being required to relocate our discharge from our sewer treatment plant to Big Cypress. TECQ has done their modeling and try to limit to 6 million gallons per day. We would like to use this consultant who specializes in water and sewer only and has a good relation with TCEQ in past in doing modeling like this to do a more independent study for our position. What we found in the past is TCEQ typically does a very conservative approach and we feel that we may be able to achieve a larger rate for future expansion needs in the future for the city's interests. In addition, we would use this consultant to do independent studies of some of our facilities to see if there's ways to improve some operations similar to the water treatment plant on the south end, see if we can maximize the amount of water that we're generating. The plant was designed for 5 million gallons, but right now we're only achieving 3.5. So we want to have a study to determine what we can do to try to get that 1.5 back and expand our water production.
This engineering firm is out of Austin?
They're actually out of, I believe, the Fort Worth, Denton area.
Do they do, you said they were going to do it from our aspect, our request. And so do they also do the negotiations with TCEQ to allow us maybe to not do quite as much and come up with a little cost savings there?
What we're trying to do is find out the maximum amount of discharge we can put in this instance, how much we can actually put into the creek. So it'll help us with the design for our sewer treatment plant expansion to what our ultimate capacity could be, and also to determine for ultimate growth that the city can have.
And you also stated that they could do some consulting on, we're 1.5 short of what the plant is actually designed to do. Is that what you said?
That's correct.
Okay, council, we have any further questions?
It appears that they've got over 40 years of experience, so they must be pretty familiar with this.
That in my discussions with them and research, I feel the same way. And again, this is a company that only works in water and sewer, and they don't do anything else.
Okay, if there's no further questions or comments, we'll open the floor for a motion.
I'll move to approve the engineering contract with Plummer.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Gaten Adams, second by Mr. Timdale. Madam Secretary, please record a vote.
Councilman Chappelle.
Aye.
Sproul. Aye. Dale.
Aye.
Aye.
Adam.
Aye.
This motion is made unanimously. We'll go ahead now and close this item and move on to our next agenda item. Next agenda item is 12 will be to consider approval of proposal for emergency repair work on Interstate 30 water treatment plant.
Well, third time's a charm. So what we have here is some repair work that's needed at the I-30 water treatment plant as a result of the winter storm. We had a couple issues. The caustic tank sprung a leak, and we're having to replace that. And that's the one that adjusts the pH. It's an extra tank that's on the northeast side of the plant. Also do a little bit of coating, repair work of the base, and a little bit of concrete work. In addition, one of our filters wasn't working correctly. They're having some bypass issues, and we met with this contractor out on site, looked at the worst case scenario of what we would have to do to repair that filter, and that was what's presented in this quote. Obviously, what we feel what actually is done will be considerably less, but this is like I said, this emergency is to do the repairs that are needed, that were the damage that was done by as a result of the winter storm, but would only be issued based on the work that's actually done. So this quote was actually the worst case and probably the high end of what the actual repair work will be.
For you and Miguel. So will the city's insurance pay for that?
Yes, sir. As soon as he gives me a copy of this quote, and I'll send it over to our insurance company, and it should be fully paid.
what type of deductible do we have on something like this, just out of curiosity?
$2,500. The insurance took all of the damage and put it under one claim, and so we just have one deductible. And so once we get all of the invoices and all the receipts put together, we just have to send all those in to them, and they'll reimburse us 100% for everything.
So this goes under the same claim we discussed last meeting with all the park damages and so forth as well?
Thank you, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. Okay, with that being said, council, if we don't have any further questions or comments, we're gonna go ahead and open the floor for a motion.
I make a motion, we consider approval of proposal for emergency repair work on the I-30 water treatment plant.
I second the motion.
We have a motion made by Mr. Henry Chappelle, second by Mr. Jerry Walker. Madam Secretary, please record the vote.
Councilman Adam,
Aye.
Aye.
Dale,
Aye.
aye, Chappelle.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close item 12 on the agenda and move on to item 13, which is our public comments. At this time, if anyone have any public comments, now is your time to speak.
There are none online.
Okay, we have no online comments from the public, so
Mayor,
go ahead, sir.
could I make one comment here? And I saved it till now because I don't want to get it mixed up with the park contract. But somewhere before the end of that, consider maybe just having the police and Larry and John. Has nothing to do with the contract, but there are a lot of security and just safety issues that have nothing to do with the contract. But everybody that's in church or whatever now, we're all reviewing our security and our whatever and lighting and who makes the rounds and whatever. And these guys, and that's not what you hired Lanny Buck to do here, but have these guys and John, we did it with the Delwood and the other park. They made some suggestions about ingress and egress and things like that, lighting and whatever. Have them make a round. These are your staff people.
Yes.
If they have any questions or comments or suggestions, that's what they do every day, and do that prior to the, so you, just like I heard lighting mentioned on a track, on a walking track or something like that. That's not Lanny and them's issue so much, but just have these guys make a, walk through out there and see if there's any issues that stare in their face and address it.
Okay, thank you, sir. We can definitely do that. Okay, at this time, we're going to go ahead and close item 13, public comments, and move on to our final agenda item, which is the city manager's report.
Holding this button down the whole time is going to be difficult. I want to first point out that Chief Buman is not here tonight. He had some people in town, some family in town tonight, that are just here overnight and leaving in the morning. So with us we have Lieutenant Miller, who's he's been around longer than Darlene, and I'm 15. And but I want to tell him thanks for being here tonight and filling in for the chief. Wanted to mention that we're going to relook at this park party. We said that, but I had this on here to we'll get back with you on what we're doing. Our thoughts were, once we had this party, we would maybe come and ask that we do 2 events a year. One would be in the April, the spring fling kind of event at this park, and then we would do the Christmas thing that we do, and then we support the Chamber of Commerce and all the events that they do. So we wanted this to be kind of an upscale kind of thing. So if we put it off till we get the park the end of the summer or whatever we do, we plan on maybe coming back with your approval and do this the end of April every year in the spring in the park. I had a couple of requests tonight, and that's all I've got left, is to kind of just go over a couple of things. A citizen asked one of our council members, we talked about selling debt and got the approval to go get it ready, and we're going to come back and get your approval to pay for it. And we talked about the amounts of the money, but did not really specify or break down what the money was for. So if you guys would bear with me quickly, there was about $6 million that we talked about doing. That was about $4 million or a little more was part of the capital improvements plan that we approved. And that is a 24-inch water line that goes down Monticello to the loop and up to, what is that FM road there, 899? Yeah, and ties back in, so there'll be water there, and then eventually we can take it under the loop and take it down the other side. It's I-30 water line to Edwards Tower. That's a $2 million cost. And then another water line, 24-inch water line construction for $2 million. So we got the West Loop for $1.2 million, and then the Edwards Tower and the other. That's the $6 million. Then actually, then we also have a project that came up that wasn't expected to come up, but it was a failure of the Town Lake Dam and spillway, and we have money in that for $2.2 million. So that all adds up to about $7.5 million total on that bond sale. That's going to be put with the other. Then the other one is the wastewater treatment plant improvement with the retrofit of the whole existing plant, and then expansion and some outfall lines and some collection lines to help offload our current collection system. And that's a $38 million. And then, of course, there's a large line going around the west side of the town that will offload some of our existing system. That's $11 million. So that's what those projects are for. The other thing I wanted to do is have Lanny, when I get through, I'll have him come up and kind of just give us an update of the Town Lake Dam project that's been going on. If you give me a minute. I had another council member ask me said he's got some questions from citizens and asked him about whose fault, what really happened in the water, in the snowstorm that caused the Tri-State area, the county area, to have to boil water. In fact, I think he said the questions were, is it the city's fault or is it Tri-State fault? And that's like a question, are you still beating your wife kind of thing. So it's not the appropriate question, but the question isn't whose fault it is. It's what happened is okay. And basically, if I just want to say, and I talked about this at the chamber luncheon a week or two ago, but our system is set up where the city limits is in the middle of the county, and then Tri-Sud is the rest of the county, and it's a circle around the city with a lot more area in there than we have in the city limits. And then if you can consider, we have 2 water plants that feed the city water, including a large user of 4 million gallons a day, the Pilgrim's plant. And so around on our city limit, out on the periphery of our city, all the way around 360, we have 14 large meters that we feed to Tri-Sud. And then we have another 6 or 7 smaller meters in between those that feed their system. And not any one meter has a dedicated water line from our plant to their meter. It's tied to the outside periphery of our system. So if you can consider, then we pump water to them, and then they have some pump stations on out into their area. And sometimes those pump stations may be 2 miles or 6 miles or a few miles into. They're not on the edge of where our city limit is. They're out in there. So we're pumping water, and it's going through our system, and the city customers, residential, using it, and our retail industry are using it, and then out on our periphery, they're getting what's left there, and it goes into their lines. And then even between their meters and their pump station, they have lines coming off of that line feeding other out in the county. So if you and as I told it in the so this weather storm really brought it to me that we have a major problem, and we're looking into it. Engineers are looking into it. I often wondered why every time we lost a pump or had a little problem that Anthony was running in and saying, "Man, I got to get this going," because we have to be pumping at full capacity to keep water on the periphery of the tri-set area. And so if you can imagine, we're pumping water 30 to 60 miles in all directions. And when you got a city as big as ours, it's the same size as Tri-Suds area as far as the number of people, but they have more area. So we're pushing water a long way, and then we're the ones that are closer here, they get the best pressure, and then out on the periphery, you imagine that it's not. So when we lose electricity, at the plant like we did in the winter storm, and it took us it was late at night, we had to get an electrician to come out. Our big compressor came on, and our compressor, we have one compressor there, and it pumps at about 40-45% capacity that we have if we have electricity. So that's one of the weaknesses. We need to invest in another big generator, or even 2 more, so that when the electricity goes out, and it could happen in a rainstorm in summer, or a tornado or whatever, or somebody hits a pole and we lose electricity, it would be good to have those generators come on and be up to 90 to 100% capacity instead of 40 or 45. So as soon as we went down, and we were down for a while, plus we had a couple of water towers freeze up, the standpipes, so forth, so we couldn't get it up or down. As soon as that happens, then the pressure of the system goes down, the volume's down. We're still using it in our system. There's no dedicated line out there, so you can understand, like having a hose stretched out 100 yards and several lines off of it, and so there's just a trickle out the end. And when that pressure goes down, they have nothing. And so they went down I think we went down to 35 psi, trying to get all that back up, and Tri-Sud went under 25 psi. And so the TCEQ rule is, if you do that, you got to boil water till you get the system back up, establish your chlorine residual, and you have to flush the lines in the house until you get it, and it takes a few days to have that happen. And so anybody that runs a water or utility system does not want to lose pressure down under 25 psi, because it has that. So it's a big problem when it's set up. We see some weaknesses, and we see that there needs to be some improvements on both sides, really, to make sure this doesn't happen. But the way it's set up, we don't have to wait for another 100-year snowstorm. It can just be, we lose electricity. It could, like I said, tornado. It could be just a bad weather. Somebody hits a pole down the line and we lose electricity in town. And so there's some things we've got to do. And to me, when I see how we're set up, it's a major problem that was brought out by this storm. And I'm grateful, really, this storm has brought this to our attention. So we need to work on it. And talk to Aaron Gann, Mr. Gann, who is the manager at Tri-Sud, and he's He's gonna get us his plan of his system, so we're looking at our system and seeing what improvements need to happen, but we need to know what his system's like, so we need to know what we have to produce or provide. So that's kind of it. We're kind of set up. We're right on the brink all the time. Like I said, Anthony's running, trying to keep it going. We have to be pumping at max. We can't take a plant out of service to maintain it. That's why this filter tonight is an emergency thing. We have to have it at capacity all the time to get the volume and pressure to all the places we're going. So there's some things we can do, and we'll be bringing them back to you, storage tanks and other things and generators. We'll be bringing that back, but we're looking at it and working on it on all fronts. So that's the answer. And if we don't get it fixed, it could happen again. We don't have to have the snowstorm. So that's that. I appreciate that. Lenny, could you come up and give us an update on the dam leak, please?
Well, I apologize for a little bit of a recap, but as you remember, this spillway that's at the New City Lake has been failing for a while, and it turns out to be on the historical register, and it was a WPA project, so it takes a little bit longer to do things than you would normally do. But I just wanted to update you on where we're at. So the Texas Historical Commission's deadline to get a response back to us is actually the 19th of this month, so by Friday. They're supposed to have a response. If that response is acceptable to our proposals, then we're ready to start the bid process and get that going. Although, just to let you know, the Corps does have to approve whatever the THC recommends. And so the Corps has basically told us that they're okay with the scope of work that we presented, but we have to get the THC to be okay with the scope of work that we presented. Scope of work is essentially to replace the bottom, to save as much of the walls as we can, and to demo the existing bridge at the golf course, put a bridge that spans the 95 feet in there. That's the scope of work in a real nutshell. We've heard from the Historical Society. They've given us one comment, but the Historical Commission itself has got till the 19th to tell us if they agree or not. What we've done is we've given them all the information they've asked for to this. No, we really do want to hear from them. And the other thing is, like I said, if they come back and they ask a question, then they've got 30 days to respond to our answer again, which is what drives you absolutely crazy at this point. But so what we did is when we sent the scope of work to them, we sent them a couple of different options so that hopefully they would approve one. Are there any questions?
Yes. If once we get that approval, we can go forward and design the fix and bid it out and so forth. We also have somebody working on a bridge, that goes across that. And I assume that bridge placement is in this, they're considering that also at this time or not? Yeah.
So that is part of this scope that we've got, is to tear that old bridge out, put a new one in, and that will span that entire location. It's the 95-foot span. That's part of the scope. Our plans right now, and I didn't explain this, I apologize, I don't even think I've mentioned this to you. What we presented to the TCEQ to approve, because they're part of this too, believe it or not, is we had to do a hydraulic and hydrology study on the dam itself. And at one time there was an emergency spillway in, and we had talked about, remember, building another emergency spillway off to the side. What we recommended is adding about 1.5 feet of soil to the top of the dam in a certain area where there's a depression right now based on the survey, and not having the emergency spillway, letting part of the golf course serve as that emergency spillway, which it already does anyway. That's what we presented to the TCQ. We believe they're going to accept that, but that would save construction of that second emergency spillway, which would have probably been a concrete or some type of, it would have been major work.
When we get the approval from everyone, what length of time do you think it'll be to, I know depending on weather and all, but to get it completed?
I forgot the time that we had in there, but it's probably a 120-day contract, I'm guessing now. and it'll take us 60 days to bid it, so we're still looking at 100. I've been telling everybody the fall, and they've been telling me the spring this whole time.
But there was a question, if they approve, somebody's got to approve whether we put the bridge back where it is. And if they approve that, then we have some options of putting it back first and then working around it to fix the project, or to do the project and then put it in last.
Yeah, this is one of those projects we're trying to be more flexible than we normally would be on. And the fact that there are people in town that have said they want to build this, we've given them the design of it. We haven't got an approved design back from anybody to build it, but once we get approval in the Historical Commission and the Corps, then we can certainly start pushing that and getting the process from them to actually do that bridge. If they can do it in a much more efficient and timely manner. We just need to make sure that we're coordinating so that we repair the spillway itself, which is the real problem. We don't want that to breach. That's the real concern.
Has the historical committee indicated anything at all that's of historical nature around that lake? Besides the lake itself, I mean, is there any other historical artifacts or anything of that nature that they have indicated to you that we need to be cautious about?
So the answer to that is yes. There's some pottery that has been detected somewhere downstream, and I'm not sure exactly where, of that spillway itself. Of course, that's a WPA project that goes on a good distance down through there. Those were the only two things that I remember off the top of my head.
Okay, if we have, Ed, will you finish with your report?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, if we don't have any questions for our city manager, I'm going to open the floor for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
We are now adjourned.